welcome back. So I'm going to pan my view for you here. This is Lake Michigan, and I have been sitting here for a little bit studying and making color notes. Now the notes I'm making, I'm doing so in my notebook. I did not actually bring my paints because I wanted to stay focused on what I was actually seeing and not get distracted by my tools. This is an exercise that I'm doing to help build my color memory and help me to file away aspects of optical impact of water or large bodies of water, so that I can use them in my work. So it's not about taking the reference photo and using that reference photo to create the artwork so much as it is about understanding how the light plays off of the surface, so that when I try to recreate it in an imaginary or imagined sort of aspect, I'm able to do so. And so for me, making color notes and studying are going to be, it's going to be my biggest tool, because I will be the most present and hopefully retain the most this way. So let's talk about what we see. Let's go from the distance closest. So, and I realize that the video may present a different sort of visual or color bit than you have, than I'm actually seeing, but I want to walk you through. I want to walk you through what I'm seeing and how I'm using the language of color and the tricks that I've taught you to identify what you're seeing. I'm going to use that language that matches, oh my goodness, excuse me, that matches my actual palette, the tools that I put in my palette, so that when it comes time to mix things, I'll be able to do that. So I'm looking out at the furthest landmass away. Remember, everything is relative. So that is one of the darkest things that I am seeing, but it's not as dark as my horizon line. And my horizon line is actually a full value step on a 10-step scale. It's a full value step darker than that landmass. And my horizon line has more color. It's more saturated than that landmass. So that landmass reads as a blue-gray. Its edges are incredibly soft. And it's actually lighter at the bottom of a shape than it is at the top or the upper edge. Now that effect could be amplified by whatever the sky effects are right now. And we have mostly a cloudless sky. It's pretty clear. But there seems to be a good amount of light bouncing from my horizon line into that landmass. So I'm going to say that landmass is cooler, it's bluer, and it's lighter in value than the water. And if I were to mix that landmass right now, I would imagine that it would be cobalt blue, which is one of my cooler blues, and a middle valued blue that I have on my palette. So it would be cobalt plus possibly a little bit of Naples, because I feel like everything here is leaning a tiny bit towards green. But I know that the yellow in that Naples, as well as Naples has a little bit of red, that will help to gray out the cobalt a bit. And then I would lighten its value with either a neutral gray or a titanium white. So then the horizon line itself, I'm noticing that the horizon line is changing. So here it's pretty dark, and if I scroll over this way, it's also pretty dark. But in this direction where the sun is, look at how my horizon line lightens. That band really, really lightens as it appears closer to the sun. So I can't just identify a signal or a single color approach because it is shifting. But over here it is definitely my lightest light, that horizon line, and it's very close to the brightness of the sky. But you'll notice that that edge of the water all the way down there between the reflection and whatnot, it is my lightest light down there at the water's edge. It's a little bit lighter than the sky. But then that horizon line, really quickly it turns a little bit darker, and it feels like it gradually shifts until it becomes a step right under a middle value. And it's a very grayed out blue. I do see some yellow in it, so it's a bit green, and it becomes more green and more blue as it travels away from the light source. And I would say that the sky is actually like a light ultramarine blue, or variations of light ultramarine blue and manganese. So I have to keep that in mind too, because we know an object is a product of its environment. So if my sky were a different color, that different color would be reflected in the surface of the water. So my horizon line becomes more blue and more green as it moves away from the sun, and it also becomes sharper. I feel like the value jump is more extreme here than over here. So I also have to remember that there's more light bouncing here in the vicinity of the sun, which is going to create less of a value jump because that area is more illuminated. And over here, away from the sun, I have less light bouncing, and it's a sharper, crisper, darker value jump there. And beyond that band of distant water, which becomes greener and warmer as it approaches, because it feels darker, more Prussian-like, where it touches that band of earth, and as it comes closer to me, it's greener. But then there becomes a point in that water form or mass where there's a substantial value jump, and the water is no longer blue. It feels like a very dirty, earthy ochre leaning towards green, and it's very light in value. It's also pretty close in value to the sky, but it has substantially more yellow in it than the sky. And if you're having difficulty seeing this, or dissecting a similar situation on your own, squint your eyes. Squinting your eyes, taking your glasses off, is going to help your brain process and simplify all the forms and the colors and the values of what it sees. So squint your eyes, and that'll help you see that. And then the other thing that I'm noticing that happens as the water gets closer to us, the surface, the actual surface of the water that's reflecting the sky becomes more apparent. The bands of the surface, if I were to break it up into shapes, they're so small in the distance, but as they get closer to me, they are broader, and they reflect the sky. So they're more of a phthalo blue, a light phthalo blue, again with a little bit of yellow in them. And I think if you were to pause this video, you might even be able to see how those bands present themselves. Where it is darker, where we're looking through a mass of water as opposed to looking at the surface of the water. Where it's darker, it's definitely more green, right? And right before the wave crests at the base of the wave, we have an even lighter sort of visual effect that happens as the water thins and the light passes through it from the underside or the backside. It becomes even more lighter in value. And in the areas where we are looking primarily at water, it's pretty green.
And in the areas where the undertow has picked up some sand or debris, it becomes oranger. Isn't that fascinating? So I am sitting here and I'm making all these color notes, as well as making notes about pattern and rhythm and the tactile feel of the air, the breeze, the sun. I'm recording all of these sensorial sensations because I can convert them into a visual language, right? I can build a vocabulary from them using my tools that will help me depict this sort of thing when I return to my studio. And I think it's also important to note the sand and the colorations of the sand, but I think this video is already long enough. Hopefully you get the idea of what it is that I'm doing here. Look at that. Isn't that one of the most glorious things? I'm gonna go walk the beach now and look for some rocks. Thanks for being here.